Link Live. So excited to be talking to you guys today. We're going to be talking about consulting, the pros and cons, what it's like, what it does for you, and anything else that comes up. So, real quick, I'm Chad Quinlan. Do consulting at Avalam, and working right now on some federal projects. So that's been a lot of fun. I do cloud stuff mostly. So
And my name is Tremor Christoph, and I'm a cloud architect at Planet Technologies.
Nice. Steve Buchanan here. I'm former Avanade and Accenture, now currently at Microsoft. I was in the consulting space for about 10 years.
Awesome.
And I'm Matthew Renzi. I'm a data science consultant, author, and public speaker. I've been an independent software consultant now for about 10 years, and prior to that, I was a consultant through a consulting firm doing software consulting.
nice. Good bit of experience there.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, Steve, how about you start us off? What are your biggest pros and cons with consulting?
Yeah, so I get asked that a lot. And I'll go with some of the pros first. So some of the pros are that you get to gain a ton of experience.
Oh, yeah.
And you can do that in a short amount of time. And you get to work with all these different companies and kind of go in and see how they do things. So not only are you going in there as the expert in whatever it is you're doing, but you're going to learn things and pick up things as well. Another pro is just the expansion of your network,
Oh, yeah.
right? Meeting other folks in the tech field, other folks in business, leaders at companies, and other consultants that you'll work with on projects. Like, your network is going to explode versus if you're internal at a company for 20 years
Right.
in the same department, you're going to build a network, but in consulting, your network's going to be internal and external. And so another pro, which also can be flipped into a con, is travel.
Yeah.
So you can see a lot of places. It can be fun at times to do some of the travel, but that also could be a con, depending on if you're the type of person that likes to travel, if you got family back at home, things like that, how often you're on the road, stuff like that. And then another pro is being able to build a brand and associate yourself with
Right.
a company, right? A consulting company that's well known. Some of the cons are if you're the kind of person you like to go into the same office every day or maybe work from home these days and kind of connect with the same team every day and everything's kind of the same, that can be tough. In consulting, when you're starting new projects, it's almost like starting a new job all over again.
Right.
You got to learn where the bathrooms are. You got to learn who the players are, where everything is, and that can be intimidating for folks. But I will say, after you've done it for a while, you kind of get good at starting that new job all the time. You kind of figure out ways to speed that up and really get going. You have to.
Yeah.
So
My big thing with that, and I guess the pro and at the same time the con that I would bring is you do have to constantly be changing what you're doing. So I get to work with new technology all the time, stuff I'm really uncomfortable with or have no clue what it's about, and I got to be the subject matter expert there. But at the same time, like you said about growing your network, I can pick up all these tools and start to see the bigger picture. So rather than being head down and really, really focused on just one thing at a time, I start to see all these tools working together, all these architectures I picked up along the way, all these different frameworks. All of them start to make sense, and I can jump from one to another. All I got to do is look at the docs. So
yeah, and you really can live on the cutting edge. If you're someone that needs variety and thrives on variety, like I like to be challenged and kind of do new things and explore new technologies, you get that in consulting.
yeah,
And you get to try the new stuff, right?
which is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And that's often one of the main reasons why someone would pull in a consultant is because they don't have the need for a full-time person with this cutting-edge technology. They just need somebody to come in and show them how this works or to train up the rest of the team on how it works so that they can go off and do awesome things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Say for me, I had to learn how to translate technology to salespeople, and for me, coming from the Eng world, you just talk to your computers, you talk to engineers, and they understand your language. but I had to learn how to, speak to CTOs, salespeople, marketing people, and how to make sure a project is understandable to them. So for me, how do I break down my project into smaller components that they actually, can learn, and also putting this project into like a big budget scope type of, document was a big deal for me, because I'm used to doing my own dev meetings and speaking to devs who understand my language, but having to explain what the project will look like after you migrate to Azure to a salesperson and telling them that this is the time that it will take you to get to the end goal. That was a big curve for me to learn into how to break down each piece by its own component. So that
So
was a
you're
big deal for me.
you're doing a lot of different roles. Like just right off the bat, you're architecting, you're engineering, your customer support,
Right.
you're even sales. You yourself, even as maybe a solutions consultant, solutions engineer,
definitely.
you're coming up with things, you're implementing them. You got to help them out when there's a problem or a question, and you got to keep selling them after you start. Like, hey, this is gonna work for you. This is
Exactly.
gonna be great. It pushes you to grow.
Yeah, and there's a lot of soft skills that you pick up
yeah.
and just business acumen that you develop through that, being able to scope a project
Right.
and then being able to go explain the project and the details and how, that's going to go and form a team.
Exactly.
Those are valuable skills that can apply to consulting, or if you go back internal or maybe at a products company like where I'm at, there's a lot of valuable skills you pick up.
It may sound odd to say this, but I think one of the litmus tests for whether a person would make a good consultant or not is how well do they interview. Because the stuff that you're doing in an interview is very similar to what you're doing all day long as a consultant in terms of, giving the customer that warm and fuzzy feeling so that they know, like, they want to continue this relationship. You're the expert, so when they ask you questions, you can give them reasonable responses, or you're not afraid to say, I don't know the answer to that, but I can figure that out over the weekend, and I'll get right back to you. But I think a lot of the same skills that make somebody good at interviewing for a job coincidentally make them good at the soft part of consulting, not the technical skills specifically, but do you know your stuff? Are you an expert? Do you give the client the warm and fuzzy feeling?
Yeah.
That's a good point. I haven't heard
There's
that.
something you touched on that I'd like to zone in on, and that's not being afraid to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I think there's a misconception that when folks are consultants, like, you are the expert of all things.
Yeah.
That's just not possible, right?
Yeah.
But being able and being confident in being able to say, I don't know.
To be able to confidently say,
Yes.
I don't know. Yep.
And then there's a difference between being at a boutique shop
Yes.
where, maybe there's 50 people that work at the company, consultants.
Right.
I mean, you're going to be the one probably figuring out what the answer is to that.
Yeah.
Or being at a company like the size of Accenture. Like, when you say you don't know,
Right.
what you really mean is, like, there's 100 other people or maybe even more that do know, and I'm going to go ask them and pull them into this, right?
So how are your experiences different at a large firm like Accenture versus a smaller boutique firm? My experience so far has just been with those boutique firms.
So with the boutique firms, first of all, the client sizes, the size of the clients,
The budget.
as well the budget, the like number, like the dollar value on the
Yeah.
projects are a lot bigger at the bigger firms. Also, the relationships at the bigger firms. A lot of times, the leaders that are at that executive level or really high up salespeople, they might have 20-year relationships with a CIO.
Yeah.
So I'll give an example. I was at a boutique firm, and there was a large Fortune 500 company we were trying to get in the door. And we spent about 3 years. I was working as a solution architect as well with the salespeople. They were trying to get in the door.
Wow.
Just land a meeting, right?
Yeah.
So we could come in and talk.
Right.
And then I went to a bigger firm, and it was like somebody made a phone call, and I'm talking to 2 architects that report up to the CIO, right? And it was like effortless. Just walked us into the building, like
There's a structure in place, pretty much.
totally different experience. And the projects at bigger firms tend to be longer. Now, not all projects are longer, But it's not uncommon to land on a project or with a client and you're there for 3 to 4 years.
Wow.
Now, it's not always a good thing.
Yeah.
In consulting, it's kind of nice if you can see the light at the end of the tunnel if you're on
Yeah.
a not so good project.
Yeah.
But as opposed to smaller organizations, sometimes you want to implement the technology, but it'd be nice to dig in a little bit and really help that company and kind of help them go through the next phases, the life cycle of that.
It's kind of your baby, something you're invested in and you built and you want to see it succeed.
Yeah.
And
So
to add
there's
to that too, I would say that for the boutique shops, I had to learn that I'm not the implementer. I'm not the person who's going to make the final say so. I'm just a technical advisor. So for me, that was a big deal because I'm used to making, the final call, but then here I am taking all these options and saying to the customer, well, this is now the best place for you that I believe, you guys can head to, and then allow them to make that call. But that process takes a long time because you have a big, shop or, a boutique, and they have time to actually make these calls. So for me, I had to learn that, there's a sweet spot, that, you bring options, but then you also advise the customer on what options to take. But they are the ones who are going to make the final call, and not me.
Which can be good or bad.
Yeah, that can be also, yeah.
Now, Matthew, I'm sorry, I cut you off. Go
Oh,
ahead.
no, I was actually just going to start mentioning the pros and cons.
Yeah, go
So, yeah, from my perspective, since I've worked for both like a medium-sized consulting firm through them and as an independent consultant, for the medium-sized consulting firm, I have to agree with pretty much all of the pros and cons that you guys have mentioned. Everything from, you get to learn a lot, but that's also potentially a con. You're constantly having to learn new stuff, which I just happen to love. You're meeting a lot of new people all the time, but you don't really have long-term relationships with a lot of them, especially if it's shorter projects. But in terms of the independent consulting world, I think the biggest pro that I found, and I might be a bit odd in this, is that in owning my own consulting company, I wanted to be solely responsible for all of the successes and the failures of the company. Like if I failed as a project, I wanted to own that. It's like, that's on me. We're going to make this right. We're going to fix this. And, when the company was successful, I guess I was kind of tired of seeing some people that were tangentially related to the project getting all of the credit for the success of the project. And it's like, they were just there for the opening kickoff meeting and the ending meeting,
Yeah.
but
I
the
did all the
team
work.
was who did all of the work. So I think I wanted to have more control over my destiny and essentially the like long-term trajectory of my career, because if you don't take control of your career, somebody else will take control of it for you. As far as the cons of independent consulting, though, the biggest one is that if you love doing technical work, you'll find that you only spend about 50% of your time doing the technical work because everything else is taking care of the business. Sales, marketing, operations, accounting, legal, every aspect of a business has to be done by somebody. So you typically do it for at least the first few years until you eventually outsource it to virtual assistants or virtual accountants or whoever else. And the other, I would say, con of being independent is that, like in the large consulting companies or even boutique firms, you typically have somebody who's the expert at that one thing that you may not know. And so when it's your consulting company and you don't know the answer, it's all on you to figure it out because there's no one else to go to ask questions or to have help bail you out.
All right, that's insightful. Appreciate that.
And I would say to probably add to that, it forces you to, to grow quickly.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So let's say you have a customer and you have a project that you want to win. You have to make sure that you actually have your knowledge up to date and at least be able to talk with them.
Yeah.
Right? And that forces you to spend late nights and study up the material to actually just get to talk to them. So that's my best part about, you have to learn and actually be, not just be in a safe spot where you just know the things you know, but actually, try to learn new things, which is actually good.
And I think it's important to recognize that consulting isn't for everyone. I would say probably about 5% of every software developer or IT professional I've met might be good at consulting, and the rest would hate it. They just, they would recognize that they're their own worst boss. They hate running their own company. They hate being responsible for everyone. They hate what feels like insecurity of, feast and famine cycles. And, so it's not for everyone, but for the people that are right for it, I really want to encourage them to get out and give this a try, because if you find that consulting is right for you, you're probably going to be a lot happier than you were as just being an employee of a company sitting behind you're in your cubicle doing your one specific narrow task all day long. I mean, you're touching so many things and so many different people, so many different technologies when you're a consultant.
That endless variety was really great.
Yes.
I mean, stuff that I never thought I'd ever learn, stuff that I didn't want to learn, that I ended up loving doing. I mean, Terraform was something I was really concerned about. Like, I was told that, oh, you're jumping on Terraform for this project, you better start learning, and I didn't like to hear that. But then that ended up being one of my greatest skills that I enjoy the most. It's a lot of fun, and I'm glad I got the opportunity.
Well, I find that I'm really good at learning new things too, and I've happened to find the right resources to learn things fast. Like, one of the things I like about the Pluralsight courses is I've got a learning path. Here's where I start, here's where I end, and essentially here's the milestones to get me through it. So essentially, I've got the industry experts teaching me this thing as quickly as possible, so that I'm not spending a whole bunch of time having to read a blog post here, a YouTube video here. This guy actually didn't even know what he was talking about, and the other person over there was actually a salesperson that didn't understand the technology, and this clearly wasn't a course on the technology. It was trying to get you to buy their product. And so, yeah, it's tricky, but you have to be really good at learning stuff as efficiently as possible in this industry.
Yeah. So what would make a good consultant? What sort of, I guess, what personal qualities would you look for in yourself to see, am I suited for the consulting world?
Quick learner,
Quick learning.
being able to, or being willing to talk to people. You're going to do a lot of that.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's this balance between being technical and social. You have to be an expert at the technical, the skills that you're supposed to be an expert at. But once again, the whole consulting industry really seems to boil down to this idea of giving a client a warm and fuzzy feeling. If the clients like you, they will continue to do more business with you, and that's how the whole market works. And so having the right social skills, I guess, to the point where people feel comfortable with you and confident that you'll be able to deliver on the project. You don't overpromise and you don't underdeliver. Yeah, I think those skills, that's kind of what sums it up. It's the balance between technical and social.
And that's really critical. Like, don't overpromise.
Yes.
Yep.
And also, I would argue to add on to that is, make sure you're going to deliver, right? I've run into clients, and this is both working at boutique shops and, one of the biggest consulting firms around is there's a lot of clients that have had those experiences where a team comes in, they're really good at selling, they sell them something, and the delivery is just like falls flat on its face, right? And so when you come in and you actually deliver what they want, they really, really appreciate that. And that also, you want to give those warm and fuzzies, but if you can deliver, they're going to bring you back.
Oh yeah.
The other thing is you have to have skills of setting expectations properly with the client. And that goes into, if you're a solution architect or solution engineer, you're a part of that pre-sales process, which I know a lot of technical people are afraid of that part of the world. That's critical because that's where you're going to get it right or you're going to get it terribly wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're working for a consulting company where the salespeople are not regularly interacting with the technical people about how to scope this project and stuff, that's a red flag. Because I've seen salespeople sell stuff that wasn't even technically possible, and then expected the developers would just be able to deliver. And it's like, that's not how it works.
I mean, it can be a fun challenge.
Yes,
but
it can.
And I've been on the side where you're the guy coming in and somebody sold something and it's like, you got to break the news. Oh, that's not possible.
Yeah.
Or I've been on a project where like day one, they're like, we're 4 weeks behind.
Yep.
Like, what?
Or technically we could do that, but it's definitely not the best way to get to
Yeah.
what you want. And what you actually need would cost you a lot less, but I can't tell you that because the salesperson already sold you the more expensive solution.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a big skill for me is being empathetic. So that means
Good one.
being able to see what the customer is seeing, right? Because a lot of times you're technical. Hey, this is my project and this is your project, but this is all the technical pieces and components that I believe will get, will take you from step A to Z. But that's not the way, they see things. They have a market outreach. So how do I, this technical person, see from their side of view and be able to connect to them from their market, right? So that's a skill I had to learn is, hey, don't become this person who just talks about technology, but try to speak the technology
people,
in terms of how they see the market.
That's
So
really
to
good.
understand their
That's-
goals,
yeah.
understand their, their market cap, understand their vision in the next 2-3 years. So being able to ask those questions before you even dive into the the tech space, that was a big skill for me to learn because it helped me to connect to the leaders and stakeholders and things of that nature.
Thanks, Shema. So we're about out of time here. We got another group coming live in just a moment. So thank you everybody for joining us, and thanks for joining us live.